In October 1997, a seemingly ordinary employee of an armored car company pulled off one of the biggest cash heists in U.S. history, stealing more than $17 million from a bank vault in North Carolina. His name was David Ghantt, and he had a simple motive. He wanted to escape his boring life and run away with his co-worker, Kelly Campbell, who had seduced him into the scheme. But what seemed like a perfect crime soon turned into a comedy of errors, as Ghantt's partners in crime squandered the money on extravagant purchases, attracted the attention of the FBI, and even plotted to kill him. This is the story of how a model employee managed to steal more than $17 million in untraceable cash, and how he was eventually caught and brought to justice. David Ghantt was a 28-year-old U.S. Army veteran who worked as the vault supervisor at a Loomis Fargo armored car warehouse in Gastonia, North Carolina. He was married, but unhappy, and felt trapped in his low-paying job. He had a crush on Kelly Campbell, a 24-year-old former employee who had left the company in the summer of 1997. Campbell was also married, but she was not interested in Ghantt romantically. She was, however, interested in his access to the vault where millions of dollars in cash were stored. Campbell and her friend, Steve Chambers, a 41-year-old ex-con, came up with a plan to rob Loomis Fargo, and they enlisted Ghantt to be their inside man. They convinced him that they would split the money evenly and that Campbell would join him in Mexico, where they would start a new life together. Ghantt agreed, and on the night of October 4th, 1997, he executed the heist. He waited until his co-worker left, then used his keys and codes to open the vault. He loaded 2,800 pounds of cash, worth more than $17 million, into a company truck. He drove the truck to a nearby storage unit where Chambers and his wife, Michelle, were waiting. They transferred the money to a van and left Ghantt with $50,000 and a plane ticket to Mexico. They also gave him a walkie-talkie and told him to stay in touch. Ghantt flew to Cancun the next day and checked into a hotel. He expected Campbell to join him soon, but she never did. She had lied to him and had no intention of leaving her husband. She also had no intention of giving him his fair share of the money. She and Chambers planned to keep most of it for themselves and send Ghantt only small amounts to keep him quiet. While Ghantt was waiting in Mexico, his partners in crime were living large in North Carolina. They bought expensive cars, houses, jewelry, clothes, and other luxury items. They also hired friends and relatives to help them launder the money, paying them a percentage of the cash. They did not try to hide their sudden wealth and flaunted their new lifestyle in front of their neighbors and acquaintances. Their lavish spending did not go unnoticed by the authorities. The FBI had been alerted to the heist by Loomis Fargo and had launched a massive investigation. They found Ghantt's fingerprints and DNA at the crime scene and traced his flight to Mexico. They also found the abandoned truck and the storage unit, where they recovered some of the money and other evidence. They realized that Ghantt had accomplices and started to look for them. They soon zeroed in on Chambers, who had bought a $635,000 mansion in an upscale neighborhood. They also identified Campbell, who had bought a $217,000 house and a $43,000 Hummer. They placed them under surveillance and gathered more clues from their phone calls, bank records, and purchases. They also received tips from informants who were either jealous or scared of the robbers. As the FBI closed in on the robbers, Ghantt was growing restless and paranoid in Mexico. He had received only $400,000 from Chambers, and he suspected that he was being cheated. He also feared that he was being followed by the Mexican police, or worse, by hitmen hired by Chambers. He decided to contact the FBI and offer to cooperate in exchange for a reduced sentence. He called the U.S. consulate and asked to speak to an agent. Meanwhile, Chambers had also grown suspicious of Ghantt and worried that he might rat them out. He hired a hitman named Michael McKinney to kill Ghantt in Mexico. He paid him $10,000 in cash and gave him a photo of Ghantt and his hotel information. He also gave him the walkie-talkie and told him to use it to communicate with Ghantt and lure him into a trap. McKinney flew to Cancun and checked into the same hotel as Ghantt. He tried to contact him through the walkie-talkie, but Ghantt did not respond. He then tried to find him in the hotel, but Ghantt had already left. He had been picked up by the FBI, who had agreed to his deal. They flew him back to the US and placed him in protective custody. The FBI used Ghantt's testimony and evidence to arrest Chambers, Campbell, and their associates. They also arrested McKinney, who had returned to the US after failing to kill Ghantt. They recovered about $3.3 million of the stolen money, but the rest was either spent or missing. They also found a videotape that Chambers had made, in which he confessed to the heist and mocked the FBI. The robbers were charged with various counts of conspiracy, theft, money laundering, and other crimes. They pleaded guilty and received different sentences, ranging from 3 to 11 years in prison. Ghantt received the longest sentence because he was the mastermind and the main perpetrator of the heist. He was also ordered to pay $17 million in restitution to Loomis Fargo. The Loomis Fargo heist was one of the most audacious and absurd crimes in American history. It was also one of the most poorly planned and executed. The robbers had no experience, no strategy, and no discipline. They were motivated by greed, lust, and boredom. They were betrayed by their own stupidity, vanity, and disloyalty. They were caught by their own mistakes, evidence, and confessions. They were, in short, the worst robbers ever.